Good morning, everyone. If I could get someone in the chat or using the thumbs up emoji, just let me know if you can hear me, see me. All right. Well, again, good morning. Happy Taco Tuesday. My name is Adrian. I'm one of the trainers here at the commission. I hope everyone's having a great start to their day. Wanted to hop on, just show my handsome face real quick, let you know I'm not a sophisticated AI. We're going to go ahead and start off today's session here, as you can see, with our disbursement and payment section. Before we go any further, just want to let you guys know that we are going to be recording today's presentation. You may see between each section that the little pop-up that says this session is being recorded will pop up because, again, we are recording and we're going to section it so we can, at a later time here, make these available online. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off here. Don't want to use up all the bandwidth, but without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in. So in this section, or actually the first half, because I will take you through half, and then Yvonne will hop on and take you through the second section of today's presentation. So, as you can see, some of the topics that we will cover here in the first half will be our term advances, supplemental payments, reporting payments, education level verification, and payment and adjustment policies. So let's go ahead and jump on in. So let's talk about term advances. So what is a term advance? A term advance is basically where we will advance you or part of the funding that you will require to make payments to your students. And this is going to be a percentage of what was reconciled in the previous year for that term. Now, not all schools will receive a term advance. Now, the schools that will not receive a term advance is any school that is new in the academic year to the Cal Grant program, any school that was previously ineligible in the prior year, or any school that has been determined through our audits as a at-risk institution. Now, the reason for this is with our new institutions in Cal Grant, they were not participants in the previous year, so there's no, we can't take 95% of what you didn't, pay. Also, again, if you were previously ineligible, because again, there were no payments in the previous year, and if you are deemed at risk, again, that is where you would then be working with us as far as submitting payments. So that is why schools, these three type of schools, do not receive a term advance. So, like I said, 95% of what was reconciled in the previous fall term is what a school that is eligible for a term advance will receive. And for any winter or spring terms, this may vary because actually what happens is we will look at any undispersed Cal Grant funds from the fall advance as we determine how much we will then advance for that winter or spring term. And also, another little part that goes into it is also we're looking at management of state funds. So quickly, let's take a look. So again, for the fall, like we say, that is set at a 95% of what was reconciled in the previous academic year for that fall term. So in this case, we're going to use CSAC City College. We reconciled in the previous fall term $616,736. So when we go ahead and do the 95% of that, we come up with 585,900, and that would be the amount that you would receive for the fall term. Now, when we do go ahead and do that fall term advance, we do send out one of our listserv notifications to let you know that, hey, the fall term is, well, I'm saying the fall term advance is coming. And again, the date that you should see that fall term advance being deposited into your Cal Grant bank account. So after the term advance, we have what's called supplemental payments. And all supplemental payment is once you have exhausted any fall term money, we will then continue to replace or keep your bank account at a zero balance. So as you pay, you know, we're taking money out just like with your own personal bank account. When you get paid and you are paying bills or, you know, grocery shopping, you know, you're withdrawing funds from your account. But when you hit zero in your Cal Grant bank account and you still have students to pay, when you submit that payment to us, we will then go ahead and, with the supplemental payment, bring your account back to zero. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So with our payment activity report, or what I like to say, your Cal Grant bank statement, we received that 585,900. And as we make payments, as you can see, we are subtracting those funds. Now, on 10/18, as you can see, we have $8,109, but we submit a total of $17,209, which leaves us in negative $9,100. Because of this, this triggers again us to make that supplemental payment for that difference, which is again $9,100. And as you continue to make payments throughout the term, as you can see, the following week, we make another payment of $44,134. And we then again, the following week, bring your account back to zero by making that same amount in a supplemental payment, and so on and so forth through the continuing of that term. So again, if you would like to find that monthly payment activity report, or like I just like to call it, the bank statement, you can find this under report download and monthly payment activity. And we do produce that every single week during the term. So all this is triggered by reporting payments. So let's talk about, how do we report payments? So there is two methods to report payments, and it's either manual on the actual roster or uploading of a grant roster file. Now, what is the difference? First one, the manual, I like to call these the onesie twosies. As you're working, maybe you have, you know, 5, 10 students that you're working on. And you know what? I'm just going to make those payments on the roster. But, and I will say this works for, again, when you're just working maybe a select, you know, set of students, and again, it's those, like I like to call them, the onesie twosies, or you're a smaller school, that may work for you. But what about the big schools, or especially the beginning of the term when you're, making a bulk payment to a lot of students, hundreds and hundreds of students? You can utilize again that grant roster file. Now, most of the financial aid management systems have that capability where you make the payments in your FAMs, and at the end of the week, it goes ahead and you can run that export. It takes all that information, it formats it into the correct roster file, and then you would upload that into web grants. And by doing so, you would then be able to pay, you know, hundreds or thousands of students at once. And again, that's great for, again, like your big schools, the UC, CSUs, or again, if you're working like again in the beginning of the term, and again, you're just, you got a lot of students to pay, this is the way. So the weekly process is you report a payment to us utilizing, again, either the display roster or that grant roster file upload. Our system over the weekend crunches the numbers. If everything's good, it reconciles, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. And once that is reconciled, it again, if you have a balance still in your Cal Grant bank account, we just subtract that. Or again, if you're into the supplemental payment because you've already exhausted your um, advance, then we do the supplemental payment. So what happens is when you are reporting these payments, either by the upload or manually on the roster, you will see students, their pay, um, the code will say either AP or AA. And this just means the system has accepted it. And this is, again, before the weekend reconciliation process that our system does. Then over the weekend, the computer system does its work. And then on Monday, if it was fully processed, you will see that that payment has been changed from the AP or AA to R. So again, A for accepted. And again, we're talking about that first letter, A for accepted. If the system reconciles, again, that first letter will then turn to an R. So RP or RA. Because again, our system has to go through and process all of your submitted payments. Sometimes they're not accepted. And if they are not, again, there is a report that we call our accept reject report. And this is a summary of the system, again, crunching all those numbers and letting you know, hey, the payment was accepted or rejected. And if it's rejected, as you can see, there is a section on the report that will say, hey, these are the rejected transactions, and also will give you a reason why it was rejected. So as you can see, some of the things may be the student already has a reported payment, there is a verification that's required. There's another one here that you could see, Actus Finch, payment more than prorated amount. So again, it just lets you know, hey, for this student, here's why the system was unable to process your transaction. So you can then go ahead and remedy whatever it is. So again, either there's already a payment, then you need to go back and be like, okay, what's going on here? Or like the EL verification, or it may be a AB 840 hold, whatever that may be. So you need to then rectify. So in the case of EL verification. You need to verify that, wait for that to process over the weekend, and then in the following week, be able to report again that transaction. And again, as we saw, we will talk about EL verification in just a little bit. So, some of the best practices for reporting, like I was saying, make sure that we are clearing those verifications, be it the EL verification or AB 840. And this is for schools that have students that are eligible for transfer entitlement awards, as we must at random select 10% of those transfer entitlement students, be it either new or renewal students. So just a quick pro tip on that. I've heard schools that they request verification for all incoming E2 students, no matter if we have flagged them for verification. So if in a subsequent year that student is flagged for this verification, they already have that documentation on file, so they can just go ahead and clear that instead of trying to reach out to the student, because as we know, students always reply to us as soon as we send them requests for information, right? Mm. As we know, that may be a little bit a pickle. So again, getting that verification information right as they come in. Sometimes that is the best time to, again, get that information. And again, may be a best practice. Again, we need to make sure that we clear those verification flags, but we say don't also try and post a payment at the same time, because again, some of our verification and holds do not allow for a payment to be done at the same time. And it's just, again, a best practice to clear the verification, come back in the following week, ensure that it was fully processed and the hold or verification has been removed from the student's record, and then process a payment request. And last but not least, again, ensure that we are not paying or reporting a payment twice for a student, because it will reject. And as we saw on that accept reject report, it will come back and say student already has a payment, with the exception of you only submit if you are making an adjustment. And as we go towards the latter part of my section that I'm presenting, we'll, talk about, hey, we'll go over some scenarios of when we would need to make an adjustment to a student's reported payment and how to do so.
Sure, I can help with this. First, please unlock your phone.
Oh, my phone decided to listen in. So let's go ahead and talk about education level verification. So, with education level verification, this is a process where we are asking you, the school, to verify the education level of the newly awarded student, because this allows us to assign the correct number of years of eligibility for that student's award. And this should be done before reporting the first payment of a student's award, because it can, if you do so, if you don't do it, it can muddy things up. I'll just use that. So the students that you will see that will not, show for EL verification are our first time freshmen, because, hey, according to the information we have, their first year never attended, awarded, they get 4 years. and our Cal Grant C recipients, as we know that that award is maximum 2 years. So we already know this information. So that's why you will typically not see those students with the EL verification hold. And to give us that EL verification, please use your written policy on to determine education levels. Because again, some schools will do that based on all completed units a student has completed, or some say, hey, up to this point, especially like some of our community colleges, they'll say, hey, no matter the number of units, we max at EL2, or a school may say, hey, we only will count those transferred units that are going towards the student's degree. So again, that's why you need to have a written policy on how to determine education levels, because we want, again, all students to be held to the same standard. Plus, if you are selected for an audit, this is one thing they will look at, and they will actually ask for your written EL policy. So as you can see, depending on their education level, again, determines the number of eligibility, years of eligibility on their award. And it goes EL1 gets 4, EL2 is 3 years, EL3 is 2 years, and EL4 gets 1 year for that award. Now, this is a sample education level policy. And from here, as you can see, we're at a semester. If we're semester, we're saying anything under 30 is EL1, 30 to 59, we're assigning EL2. EL3 is anywhere between 60 to 89, and anyone with more than 90, we're assigning EL4. So as you can see, depending on the amount of payment that a student receives, or their unit load, determines how much eligibility they'll use for the payment that you submit to us. So if they are only half time, they will only utilize 25%. If they are 3/4 time, that's 37.5, and 50% if it is a full-time payment, and that's at a semester-based school. And as you can see, in 1 year, if they are full-time for both terms, maximum eligibility used in that year would be 100%. Now, with our quarter schools, the numbers are just a little different: 33.33 full time, 25% quarter time, and 16.67 for half time. And if a student attends a summer term and wants a Cal Grant payment, that actually will speed up the usage of their award, because they would use, again, the same number of eligibility, but it's, again, they're what's the word I want to say? They're supercharged. I won't say supercharged, but they're using their eligibility quicker, but hopefully they're also going to be moving through and getting towards completion of their degree program also faster. All right, so let's talk about payments and adjustment policies. So these are just some of the general rules for Cal Grant, and that is: one, the student enrollment status is locked in at your census for payment, and payments should be dispersed based on, again, their enrollment status at your census date. And last, schools should follow your own written policy on when to determine when that census date is, because the census date is important, as you will see. So if you make the student's payment before census, you will pay the student, let's say again, they're full time, you give them the full time payment, but you would need to actually come back at census and ensure that the student has not dropped below, because if so, you would then need to adjust that payment to what the student's enrollment status is at the time of your census date. Now, if you wait to pay the student and you wait until census so you know exactly what it is, that's great. But again, you will use whatever their status is at that census date. Basically, the way to think about it, your census date is the snapshot of what the student is eligible to be paid for. And if you pay the student after a completed term, or you give them they didn't know they had the award, and then it's spring and they're like, hey, I was here fall, and you're paying, doing a retroactive payment, the payment will be that of the enrollment status at the end of that term that you are retroactively paying for. Now, when it comes to repeat coursework, we will allow a student to be paid if they are if they are sorry, 1 second. All right, sorry about that. So again, with repeat coursework, as long as they have not passed that course, they can receive payment for that course, even if they have taken it, say they failed, you know, term one, term two, they're going to take it again. You can include that in their units to receive payment. But after they pass the course, so basically they get that C, they can take it one more time. Let's say, you know what, this is in my degree program and I really need, an A or B. So I'm going to take it again. You can count that in their unit load one last time. Now, if they take it a third time, then they would not be eligible to have those units counted for payment purposes. Also, schools are required to establish and maintain a written refund policy that includes Cal Grant. Just like Return to Title IV, or some know it as R2T4, your refund policy should specify how the refund is calculated and how to determine the portion of Cal Grant funds that need to be returned to the Commission. So, if you determine a student is eligible to keep funds, you will need to adjust the enrollment status that charges the least amount of eligibility, but will still allow you to pay them the dollar amount that they are due. Now, that dollar amount cannot exceed the tuition charge nor exceed adjustment amount for enrollment. So, as you can see here, we have determined that the student is eligible to keep a portion of their Cal Grant funds, but we need to again adjust that um, the charge of eligibility to pay them what they are due. So again, we've done our calculations here. We see that they are eligible to keep, because the full term amount would be 3042, But after our calculations, we see they're only eligible to keep the 1521 or half. So in that case, we're going to charge them not full time, but half time, because half time will again charge the least amount of eligibility, but it does allow us to again pay the student what they have been calculated and are eligible to keep. Now, for Cal Grant purposes, summer, we consider that a trailer, not a header for the academic year. And like I was speaking about earlier, if students do receive payment for a summer term, that will accelerate the usage of their Cal Grant eligibility. And last but not least, new Cal Grant awardees are eligible for summer payments in their first award year. But if that is so, you will need to contact our school support to help with processing of payment. So we have two options when it comes to summer enrollment. Now we know some schools are mandatory full year or year-round schools. And in this case, they actually can communicate that with us. Um, and they let us know, and we will actually build their roster to where immediately when we release the roster, that it has all the terms on there: fall, winter, spring, and summer. But that again needs to be communicated to us, and that is done through the college cost estimate that schools report to us every year. But for schools that are traditional, so again, fall, spring, or fall, winter, spring, and the summer is, you know, it is optional. What happens here is when we release the roster, it only releases with the mandatory terms, again, semester being fall and spring or fall, winter, spring. But then later during that spring term, we will actually, it's a little drop down that says add summer term. And so you get through spring, it's getting close to summer, or it is summer. The students there, they want the payment. You would just, again, it's a little drop down box that says add summer term. And then that will then populate the summer term payment box where you'll then be able to, again, report payment for the summer term. Now, there are some special things here for mandatory summer enrollment. So when it comes to Cal Grant B tuition and fees, for terms that begin July 1st or later, a sophomore student may receive summer tuition and fee payments. Now, this is a manual payment process that will need to be processed after access payment has been made using the roster or upload. This is due to the system still seeing the student as a EL1 student. And as we know with our Cal Grant B, if they are EL1, they are not eligible for the access portion of the award. But in this case, again, a manual payment process will need to be done. So you will contact our school support team and they would help you process that student. Then we have our Cal Grant C students with books and supplies. And in this case, students may receive summer payment preceding their first year as Cal Grant awardee. And this also will be a manual process because, as we just spoke about, summer is in our system a trailer, not header. So that's why you would then also need to contact our school support team, but they'll be able to help you with processing a manual payment. We have another thing that we do, and this is tied to our competitive students. And what we do here is to ensure that we get 100% um, rate on our competitive awards. So every award is paid. If we're in a year where we're seeing that the pay rate is kind of lagging, it's not getting to that 100%, we will do something called a competitive recycle. And in this case, what we do is we send communication to all the schools saying, hey, our payment rates are low. Please go ahead, work your competitive students, because after XYZ date, we're going to do a competitive recycle. So any student that does not have a payment, an O code, or leave of absence. Well, as you can see right here on the bottom, these are the codes that will hold that student's award. But if none of these are reported on that student, their award will be withdrawn, and then we will award how many ever students that are in this situation that we withdraw. So just for quick, let's say it's 55 students, just random number, 55 students will withdraw. And then we'll, because again, with competitive, every student gets scored. We'll go back to those scores and say, okay, who are the next 55 students that just barely missed out on the 13,000 awards that we, offered initially? And we'll pull up, you know, 13,001 to 13,000, I mean, not, it would be 13,055. We're going to pay, we're going to say, hey guys, we now have an award available for you, and hopefully you'll get paid. Because again, we want to utilize all 13,000 competitive awards. But this does not happen every year because, again, if we see we are trending, and I believe in the last few years we have hit the 100%, we do not do a recycle. All right. So we're going to take a quick 30-second break. Woo! But if you have any questions, please continue to utilize the question and answer function so my teammates can go ahead and answer your questions live. I'm going to take a quick 30 seconds here, take a quick sip of water.